Okay. All right. Welcome back to Latin 2, chapter 15. This is another chapter that's kind of it's like a grab bag of minor but significant Latin features that will really enhance your understanding both of Latin, but the complications that lie therein. And now we are in, after a desert of ablative, we are in just a true utopia of ablative uses. So today we are going to talk about numerals, the genitive of the whole, which I mentioned a little bit in class today, and then ablative with numerals and ablative of time. All great features. So first of all, let's talk about numbers. The first, there's two kinds of numbers that are important to know in Latin class. There's the cardinal numbers and the ordinal numbers. So we're going to start with cardinal numbers. Most of them are indeclinable, quote, adjectives. I'm not sure why I put quotes around them. Maybe because they're indeclinable. I think of adjectives as things that decline and describe things, and cardinal numbers kind of are sui generis. They just do their own thing, but they don't decline. So whether or not you're talking about nominative, like 5 in the nominative or 4 in the accusative, or 7 in the dative, it's going to be the same word no matter what. We've seen some examples of other indeclinable words. Nihil is the big one. But so now we're going to add to that cardinal numbers. So you can see here the word quatuor means 4. So if you want to say 4 girls, you would just say quatuor puellae. There's no need to make quatuor agree with puellae in number or gender, obviously, or case. So you could have quatuor puellae as the subject, but you could have quatuor puellas as the accusative object. Similarly, you could have quinque pueri, that's 5 boys in the nominative, but if you wanted to say of 5 boys, you'd have quinque puerorum. If you wanted to talk about 6 men in the accusative, you'd use sex viros, but you would also be able to say 6 men in the nominative, you would say sex viri. So the noun would change its case, but the number does not. Septem reginas, that's 7 queens in the accusative. You could also have, for example, septem reginibus. Septem reginis, before 7 queens or by 7 queens. The full list of cardinal numbers is found in the appendix in Wheelock. That's page 500 for those of us using the 7th edition. But if you're using a different edition, it'll be back there somewhere. I would recommend committing the numbers 4 through 10, quatuor, quinque, sex, septem, octo, noem, and decem to memory, just because they're common numbers, and they'll help you throughout life. Will this be on a quiz? Probably not. I think it's just helpful to know those numbers. And so whereas all of the cardinal numbers above the number 4 are indeclinable, they always stay the same. The numbers 1 through 3 are adjectives that decline. But fortunately, they have fewer forms because of the nature of their meanings. So the number 1, if you want to say one man, one woman, one animal, you would use unus aum. I think we've already talked about this. This is an adjective very much in the unus nauta family. So unus aum looks like a normal adjective, but then genitive, unius, unius, unius. Dative is uni, uni, uni. My cat's over here. She's just being adorable, etc. So you can see how it declines. And it's not anything too unusual, but it's good to be familiar with that declension. There is only a singular declension for unus, which makes sense, though I have taught from a textbook that argues that there's a plural form of this adjective. It's a mind-blowing concept that I do not like to think about, but yes, I just want you to let you know that it's out there. I would never hide anything from you. So that's one. So here are some examples of unus in action. So in the phrase unus morbus multos homines vincit, this is one disease kills many men. So here unus is masculine nominative singular, agreeing with the word morbus, masculine nominative singular, in exactly the same way that multos is an adjective agreeing with homines. One disease conquers many people. In the sentence studium unius feminae est magnum, here unius is feminine genitive singular, agreeing with feminae. So the zeal of one woman is great. Magnum is just an adjective agreeing with studium here. In this example, uni is a dative form of this adjective, agreeing with kiwi. I give the sign to one citizen, to one citizen. So uni, just agreeing with kiwi. And then in the final example, we have aluisti unum animal, you nourished one animal. So here unum is dative, I'm sorry, it's accusative, neuter accusative, singular, agreeing with animal. So there we see a cardinal number acting just like we would expect all of our adjectives to do. Um, Furthering this, the cardinal number 2, duo, duai, duo, is an adjective that declines. This is a little bit strange in particular because it functions like a third declension adjective, which we haven't learned yet. We're going to be picking that up in the next chapter. So it's kind of nice just to memorize these kind of individually, like just take a time out and memorize duo in its entirety. It's not too complicated. You have the masculine, duo, duorum, duobus, duos, duobus. And then in the feminine, duai, duarum, duabus. So that might be a little bit unusual, duas, duabus. And then the neuter, which looks exactly like the masculine, except for the accusative is the accusative plural is duo, just like all our neuters. And yes, this only exists in the plural, and no one, as far as I know, has ever argued that there should be a singular form of this adjective. And then finally, here are some examples. Duo morbi, so here's two diseases, masculine, nominative, plural, conquered many men. The zeal of two women, so notice that duarum feminarum, the zeal of two women is great. I give a sign to two citizens, duobis kiwibus, dative plural. And aloisti duo animalia, this is the strangest looking one, but remember duo in the neuter accusative is just duo. So you nourished two animals. These two do not look anything alike, but they're both neuter accusative plural. So they agree with each other. Yeah, okay. And then now, finally, the number 3. This is again, just kind of unusual. The masculine and the feminine match perfectly. Trace, trace, trium, trium, tribus, tribus. So effectively, masculine and feminine, and I think Wheelock does this, are collapsed into one category. And this is going to become more and more familiar to us as we learn our third declension adjectives. But for now, they're all written out for you. And then the neuter is only slightly different. We have tria in the nominative, tria obviously in the accusative, but it matches up in all the other cases. So seeing these in actions, if you want to say 3 diseases, you would use the masculine nominative plural form of trace, trace morbi, conquer many men. If you wanted to say of 3 women, you would use trium feminarum. So notice that looks like a little masculine to us, but it is the feminine form of this adjective. Here we have tribus kiwibus. I give a sign to 3 citizens. And then aloista, tria animalia. These look much nicer, right? These look very similar. You nourished 3 animals. So yeah, so those are our cardinals. Finally, 1,000 and thousands are considered obviously cardinal numbers. These are not ordinal, but they're a little bit weird. So there's a couple ways you can think of it. If you want to say 1,000, you can think of it kind of just as an indeclinable, like quattuor, quinqua, because 1,000 is just mila. It doesn't change. No matter what case you're in, it's going to be mila. But if you want to say thousands, you have to use an adjective form, and it's an adjective that looks like a neuter I stem adjective, just like tria. So milia, milia, millibus, milia, millibus. We're going to see some examples of the difference. It's a very fine distinction, at least to me, not a math person, between 1,000 and thousands, but this has some interesting ramifications for us. So if we want to say 1,000 degrees, 1,000 diseases are conquering, we would have milla morbi. So that would be milla, like an indeclinable adjective, like quattuor, agreeing with morbi. 1,000 diseases are conquering many men. Similarly, if we wanted to say the zeal of 1,000 women, ooh, I might have to think about this. No. Oh, yeah, no, this is right. Sorry, I outthought myself. So here, milla is, where's my, there we go. So milla feminarum, the zeal of 1,000 women. So here, milla is kind of modifying in an indeclinable way this genitive, the zeal of 1,000 women. If we wanted to say put Mila in the dative or put it with a dative noun. We would just still leave it as Mila. I give a sign to 1,000 citizens. Mila kiwibus. And finally, you nourished 1,000 animals. Mila animalia. So Mila, indeclinable, just like so many. But then when we get into the thousands, we use the term milia as kind of as earlier slide said, we use it like a neuter third declension noun. So we're going to talk about this in just a second when we talk about partitive genitive. But so let's look at this example. So thousands of diseases conquer many men. So thousands is here functioning as a nominative noun, a neuter nominative plural noun, subject of winked, and then taking this partitive genitive. Thousands of diseases, or just that's the only way you can do it. Thousands of diseases are conquering many men. In this example, studium millium feminarum est magnum, you'll notice that we have two genitives, millium and feminarum, but they don't actually agree with one another because millium is acting like a third declension noun. The zeal of thousands of women is great. So feminarum is actually modifying millium, which is modifying studium, but these do not agree with one another. In this third example, we have millibus, the dative form, the dative accusative, the dative neuter plural form of this. I give a sign to thousands of citizens. They don't agree with each other. Kiwium is a genitive going with this millibus. And finally, you nourish thousands of animals. Here, milia is the object of aloisti, the neuter accusative plural object of aloisti, and animalium is a partitive genitive going with that. So milla, 1,000, acts like an indeclinable adjective. Millia, thousands, acts like a third declension noun. That's a big difference. But I think the translation of it tends to be pretty instinctual, but we'll find out, and we can keep talking about it if not. So that was cardinal numbers. Ordinal numbers, fortunately, are much more straightforward. Ordinal numbers, i.e. first, second, third, fourth, fifth, they're all adjectives that decline like all of our adjectives. So primus, prima, primum, first. Secundus, secundus, secunda, secundum, second, etc. Tertius, tertia, tertium, third. Quartus, quarta, quartum, fourth. These all just decline like bonus, aum. So they should not behave differently than you've gotten used to or getting used to at this point. You can find a full list of the ordinals on page 500. You should know all of them. Just kidding. Most of them are going to be super familiar to you just from living in the world as a human being. So many derivatives come from here. So I would suggest reviewing those and just being like, wow, English, Latin, what a connection. But, no worries about knowing them by heart or anything. And so here's some examples of ordinal numbers in action. We've got primus morbus, the first disease conquers many men. Here primus is just an adjective modifying morbus, masculine, nominative, singular. In the second example, secundae feminae, these two are both feminine, genitive, singular. Secundae taking its case number and gender from the noun, it's modifying feminae. Tertio kiwi, here we have tertio in the masculine dative singular to agree with kiwi. I give a sign to the third citizen. And aloisti quartum animale, you nourished the fourth animal. There should not be an E here. That's a mistake on my part. I apologize. But these are both meant to be neuter accusative singulars, object of aloisti. So that's your ordinals. I think those will go down easy, as they say. Okay, so next issue is partitive genitive. So what did I write here? The key to the partitive genitive is not the genitive per se, because you're still going to translate this with of. Genitive doesn't change its translation, but it has a different kind of valence. So the issue isn't the genitive per se, but the sort of words that take a partitive genitive, words which we wouldn't necessarily recognize in English as going with this kind of genitive concept. So for example, if you wanted to say, no one of the men, that's just not to me a very English-y statement, but Nemo is a pronoun. What's Nemo? It's in the noun pronoun family. It takes a partitive genitive. So rather than saying no man, which you could do, of course, nullus vir, but you could also say Nemo viror, no one of the men. So virorum is a partitive genitive, speaks the truth. A better example is this multum veritatis. So here, multum is functioning as a neuter or accusative singular noun that's taking a partitive genitive. So he, she, or it, to Maybot, used to fear much of the truth. That sounds very awkward to us. We would definitely say much truth, would we? But we would say something different than this, but this is how we see it in Latin classical literature. Satis is a very common word that we see taking the partitive genitive. In fact, I think we've already seen it in this class. In English, for sure, we would just say enough blank, but in Latin, you always have to say enough of blank. So in the sentence, numquam habebo satis memoriae, I will never have enough of the truth. That's what the Latin is saying. But you can very legitimately translate it in English as enough truth. And then some other common words that take the partitive genitive, like aliquid, quid, tantum, and quantum, are words we're learning later. Just so you know, aliquid means something, so you'd have something of blank. Quid means a part, a bit. Tantum, so much. Quantum, how much. So we'll get to those later, but they will also take the partitive. So maybe just try to think about that. Yeah. And then, so this is also something that's kind of just counterintuitive to us as English speakers, but it's not a crazy concept. So as I say, in English, we would say 5 women or 6 cats or 13 hours. Instead of doing something like that, Latin will use the cardinal number plus x plus ablative. So if you wanted to say 5 women, even though I know this was in my example earlier, quinque feminae, which could work, but what the Romans would do is they'd have quinque ex feminis, 5 of the women. We would even say that 5 of the women, but it's literally 5 out of the women. But when you see something like quinque ex feminis, it should just be 5 women. That's the sense. Sex ex felibus would be 6 out of the cats, i.e. 6 cats. Tridecem ex horis, 13 of the hours is 13 hours. So when you see a cardinal number with x plus ablative, just think of that as a unit, that we would translate slightly differently in English. Okay, so that's the end of the numbers. So now we're just going to quickly talk about a couple other uses of the ablative. So in English, when we want to say something like, I'm going to have dinner in 5 minutes, or I am going to be seeing you, in the next week, within the next week, to indicate time within which we use prepositions in English, like in. Latin does not do that. It can cover those time sayings simply by using the ablative. So when you see a time statement, specifically like the words tempus, the words die, which we haven't learned yet, the word annum, when we learn the word month, it'll be in there. If you just put that time word, hora, in the ablative, you're already in an ablative of time within which construction. So when you see something like eo tempora, it's not by that time, it's within that time, in that period of time. When you see something like eo die, on that day or in that day, illo anno, in that year or on that year. So no preposition, the ablative covers that, but only with time expressions. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. I feel like there was another ablative use, but it's fine. We'll talk about that next week. So please do just read over Wheelock's explanation of those things to kind of reinforce them. And then let's do the exercitationes on page 1 through 10 on page exercitationes 1 through 10 on page 127 if you're using the latest edition of Wheelock. Otherwise, it's just 1 through 10 of chapter 15. So otherwise, thank you. I hope you have a great weekend. And I just realized that oh good, it was filming. Okay, that would have been really, really terrible. Okay, bye-bye.